the history you forgot. Welcome back to Veiled Wealth. I am the archivist. Most of you know the date. It is etched into the collective memory of every gold bug, every stacker, and every student of financial history. April 5th, 1933. That was the day Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102. With the stroke of a pen, holding gold became a crime. With the stroke of a pen, the wealth of the people was nationalized to save the solvency of the state. We often talk about 1933 as if it were ancient history. We talk about it as if it were a black and white movie that could never happen in high definition. We tell ourselves comfortable lies. We say, that was a monetary crisis. Gold was money back then. Silver isn't money now. The government doesn't care about my silver stack. I'm here to tell you that you are looking at the wrong definition of money. And you are looking at the wrong definition of seizure. We need to talk about Executive Order 2026. We aren't talking about the government coming door to door for your coins. That is the old playbook. That is the analog version of tyranny. We are talking about a digital, industrial, and strategic seizure. A seizure that doesn't happen at your front door, but happens at the mine, at the refinery, and at the COMEX vault. Because while you were watching the Federal Reserve, while you were watching the inflation numbers, the Department of Energy was quietly rewriting the rules of ownership. They have stopped viewing silver as a commodity. They have stopped viewing it as a precious metal. They have officially labeled it a critical material. Do you understand the weight of those two words? When the government labels something critical, the free market ends. When the government labels something strategic, your property rights become secondary to national security. If you own physical silver today, you're no longer just an investor. You're not just a stacker. In the eyes of the Defense Department, you are a hoarder of strategic military supplies. And today, on Veiled Wealth, we are going to tear down the legal framework that is being built brick by brick to take your seat at the table. Conductivity is currency. To understand the threat of 2026, you have to unlearn the lessons of 1933. In 1933, they took the gold because they needed to devalue the dollar. It was a monetary confiscation. They needed the gold to back the paper so they could print more paper. But in 2026, the threat isn't monetary. The United States government doesn't need your silver to back the dollar. They gave up on backing the dollar decades ago. They can print digital dollars into infinity. No, they need your silver for something much more tangible, something much more desperate. They need it to keep the lights on. They need it to keep the missiles flying. They need it to keep the green energy transition from collapsing into a pile of rust and broken promises. You see, for the last 50 years, silver has been treated as a hybrid metal, part money, part industrial. But in the last 24 months, that balance has shifted violently. Silver is now the single most conductive metal on the periodic table. It is the blood in the veins of the modern economy. You cannot build a solar panel without it. You cannot build an EV without it. You cannot build a Tomahawk missile, a 5G tower, or an AI data center without it. And this is where the critical material designation changes everything. I want you to listen to me very carefully. The United States Department of Energy recently released its updated critical materials assessment. For years, silver was ignored. It was considered abundant, but in the latest updates, the language is changing. The classification is shifting. They are acknowledging that the supply chain is at risk. Why does this matter? Because under U.S. law, specifically the legal frameworks established for national security, the government has the right to secure critical materials by any means necessary. This is not about the price going to 100. This is about the supply going to 0 for the private citizen. Sustainability. Now, how do they sell this to the public? In 1933, they sold the gold confiscation as patriotism. They told the people they were hoarders who were making the Great Depression worse. In 2026, they will use a different word. They will use the word sustainability. The green energy transition is the perfect Trojan horse for resource nationalization. Think about the narrative that is already being planted in the media. We are told that the planet is in crisis. We are told that we must transition to solar and electric vehicles to survive. We are told that this is an existential threat. So what happens when there isn't enough silver to build the solar panels? What happens when the price hits $100 and the solar companies go bankrupt because they can't afford the raw materials? Do you think the government will say, well, I guess the Green New Deal is over? The free market wins? No, they will declare a climate emergency. They will say that the transition is too important to be held hostage by speculators and hoarders. They will say that the silver you're holding in your safe is needed to save the planet. It is the ultimate moral cover. If they take your silver to save the dollar, you are a victim. But if they take your silver to save the climate, you are a villain for resisting. This is the psychological trap they are setting. They are moving silver out of the category of financial asset and into the category of public utility. And you do not own public utilities. The state does. So we have the motive, the green transition and the military-industrial complex. We have the justification, national security and climate emergency, and we have the classification, critical material. But the question you should be asking, the question that separates the paranoid from the prepared, is how? How do they actually do it? Defense Production Act. They can't go door to door. There are too many gun safes in America. There are too many lakes where boats have tragically sunk. They know they can't physically take the metal from your hands without starting a revolution, so they won't. They don't need to take your metal to destroy your market. They have a weapon that is far more effective than a SWAT team. It is a weapon that was forged in the fires of the Korean War. It has been sitting on the books, gathering dust, waiting for this exact moment. It is a law that allows the President of the United States to seize the entire output of a mine before it ever reaches the refinery. It is a law that allows them to force companies like APMEX and JM Bullion to stop selling to you. It is a law that turns the spot price into a ghost number that you can look at but never trade. It is called the Defense Production Act of 1950, DPA. Most people think this law is only for war. They think it is for building tanks and bombers. But the definition of national defense has changed. Under the modern interpretation, national defense includes critical infrastructure protection and restoration. It includes energy security. I want to read you the exact text of Title I, Section 101 of the Act. I want you to listen to the language because this is the legal authority that overrides your property rights. The President is authorized to require that performance under contracts or orders which he deems necessary or appropriate to promote the national defense shall take priority over performance under any other contract or order. And the President may allocate materials, services, and facilities in such manner upon such conditions and to such extent as he shall deem necessary or appropriate to promote the national defense. Do you understand what allocate means in legal terms? It means rationing. It means the government gets to decide who gets the metal and who doesn't. It means they can legally tell a refinery, cancel your order with the bullion dealer, cancel your order with the jewelry maker, send 100% of your output to Raytheon, send 100% of your output to the solar gigafactory. And the refinery has no choice. If they refuse, it is a felony. This isn't theoretical. There is already a system in place to execute this. It is called the DPS, Defense Priorities and Allocation System. The Blackout scenario. In the system, there are rated orders. There are DO ratings and DX ratings. A DX rated order is the nuclear option. It takes precedence over everything. Imagine this scenario in 2026. The silver shortage is acute. The price is spiking. The green transition is stalling because there is no paste for the panels. The President invokes the DPA. He issues a DX rating for silver destined for critical energy infrastructure. Overnight, every major refinery in North America, Asahi, Sunshine, Hiraeus, receives a federal directive. They are told that all silver production must be used to fill the DX orders first. Only after the government's hunger is satisfied can they sell to the private market. But here's the catch. The government's hunger is endless. The DX orders will consume 100% of the available supply. There will be nothing left for the private mints. There will be nothing left for Apimex. There will be nothing left for you. So what does this look like for you, the retail investor? It doesn't look like a confiscation. No one kicks down your door. It looks like a blackout. You wake up one morning, you see the headlines, Strategic Silver Shortage Declared. You log on to your favorite bullion dealer's website. You click on the American Silver Eagle, out of stock. You click on the 10 O's bar, out of stock. You check the generic rounds, not available. You think, okay, I'll go to my local coin shop. You drive down there. The shelves are empty. The owner tells you that his distributor cut him off. He hasn't received a shipment in 3 weeks. He tells you that the mints are fully allocated to government contracts. You look at the spot price on your phone. It says $45 or maybe $50, but you can't buy it for $45. You can't buy it for $100 because the market has been bifurcated. There's the government price, the price the state pays to the mines under the DPA contracts. And then there is the street price, the price you pay in the black market to get your hands on a single ounce. And the gap between those two numbers is the cost of your freedom. This is exactly what happened with uranium. This is exactly what happened with steel in World War II. The spot price becomes a fiction. It becomes a ghost number, the price control trap. But archivist, you ask, if the government is buying everything, won't the price skyrocket? Won't I get rich selling my stack back to them? That is the second trap. Under the Defense Production Act, the government has the power to prevent price gouging during a national emergency. If they declare silver to be a strategic asset essential for national security, do you really think they will pay the free market price? Do you think they will let a bunch of speculators hold the U.S. military ransom? No. They will institute a price ceiling. They will say, In the interest of national security, the price of silver is fixed at $50 per ounce. They will call it a fair price. They will say that anyone selling above that price is a war profiteer. So now the spot price is locked at $50. The mines are forced to sell at $50. And you're sitting on a stack of metal that the black market values at $200, but the legal market says is worth $50. If you try to sell it to a dealer, they can only legally pay you the spot price. If you try to sell it on eBay, the listing gets taken down for violating price control regulations. You're trapped. You own the asset, but the market for it has been destroyed. This is the brilliance of the modern seizure. They don't take the metal, they take the liquidity. The Windfall Profits Tax. But I know what some of you are thinking. I can see the comments already. Archivist, I don't care. I'm never selling. I'll hold it forever. They can't stop me from owning it. You are right. They might not stop you from owning it, but they have a plan for that too. Because if they can't force you to sell, and if they can't seize the metal physically, they will do the next best thing. They will come for the profit. They will turn your premier wealth preservation into a tax liability so massive that you will wish you had sold. It is called the Windfall Profits Tax. Now, before you call me a conspiracy theorist, I want you to open a history book. I want you to look at the year 1980. The price of oil had exploded. Inflation was rampant. Energy companies and investors were making fortunes, while the average American was waiting in gas lines. Did the government seize the oil wells? Did they nationalize Exxon? No, that would be socialism. Instead, on April 2nd, 1980, President Jimmy Carter signed the Crude Oil Windfall Profit Tax Act. It was an excise tax, and the mechanism was diabolically simple. The government established a base price for oil, a price they decided was fair. Anything sold above that price was taxed at rates up to 70%. Do you understand the brilliance of that theft? They let the companies keep the oil. They let the companies do all the work. They let the market function technically, but they confiscated the upside. They said, you can make a profit, but you cannot make a windfall profit during a national crisis. Now, fast forward to 2026. Replace the word oil with silver. Replace energy crisis with green transition emergency. The blueprint is exactly the same. Let's walk through exactly how this happens to you. Silver hits $200 an ounce. You're sitting on a monster gain. You bought at $30. You're feeling like a genius. You decide it's time to sell a tube of coins to pay off your mortgage. You walk into a coin shop, if you can find one that is still allowed to operate. You put your coins on the counter. The dealer looks at you. He doesn't smile. He points to a sign on the wall. Federal excise tax rate, 80%. The math of confiscation. Here's the math. The market price is $200. The government base price, set by the Department of Energy for National Security, is $50. The windfall is $150 per ounce. The tax on that windfall is 80%. That means out of the $150 profit, the government takes $120. You keep $30 plus the original $50 base. So you walk in with an ounce worth $200 and you walk out with 80. They didn't steal your silver. They let you sell it. They just stole 60% of your purchasing power at the point of sale. And the worst part, it is completely legal. It is constitutional. And the public will cheer for it. This is the part that hurts the most. You think you will be the hero of this story? You think you will be the prudent investor who prepared when everyone else was asleep? But to the average citizen, the guy who can't afford gas, the guy whose electric bill just tripled because the solar grid is failing, you are not a hero. You are a villain. The media will not call you a saver. They will call you a hoarder. They will call you a speculator. They will say that people like you are holding the green transition hostage. They will say, why should this guy get rich from a national emergency while the rest of us suffer? The windfall profits tax will be sold as fairness. But archivist, you whisper, I'll just sell privately. I'll sell for cash. No paper trail. You're forgetting about the surveillance state. You're forgetting that in 2026, the threshold for reporting transactions will likely be 0. Under current laws, dealers have to report certain cash transactions. But do you really think in a strategic resource emergency, they will let cash transactions slide? The Treasury will implement a digital asset tracking requirement for all critical materials. Every dealer will be required to file a Form 1099-B for every single ounce purchased. If you sell to a dealer, it goes to the IRS. If you try to use a digital currency to sell peer-to-peer, it is on the blockchain. And if you get caught selling critical materials on the black market to avoid the windfall tax, that isn't tax evasion, that is trafficking in stolen government property. Surviving 2026. So we have covered the freeze, DPA. We have covered the theft, windfall tax. We have covered the narrative, you are the enemy. It paints a very bleak picture. It sounds like checkmate. But here at Veiled Wealth, we don't just identify the problem. We identify the exit. There's a loophole. There's always a loophole for the people who write the rules. And if you look closely at history, if you look at what the elites themselves are doing right now, you will see that they aren't selling. They are moving their metal. To find the exit, we have to go back to the scene of the crime, 1933. When FDR confiscated gold, he didn't take all the gold. Executive Order 6102 contained a specific exemption. It is known as Section 2B. It stated that the order did not apply to gold coins having a recognized special value to collectors of rare and unusual coins. Why did they leave this loophole open? Because the government was after the commodity. They were after the monetary mass. They didn't care about the history. They didn't care about the art. They wanted the melt value. In 2026, this distinction will be even more critical. Remember, the Department of Energy wants silver for conductivity. They want it for industry. They want 1,000 years commercial bars. They want grain. They want generic rounds that can be easily melted down and turned into solar paste. They do not want your 1893 Morgan silver dollar. They do not want a limited mintage numismatic coin that has a premium far above its melt value. Why? Because melting down a historical artifact to make a missile is a PR nightmare. And more importantly, it is inefficient. The government is a blunt instrument. They will target the bulk bullion first. Jurisdictional firewalls. But what if they change the rules? Then you need a defense that is stronger than a definition. You need a defense that is based on geography. You need a jurisdictional firewall. The Defense Production Act is a United States law. The Windfall Profits Tax is a United States tax. The president's signature is powerful, but it has a limit. It stops at the border. If your silver is sitting in a safe in Texas, it is subject to U.S. law. But if your silver is sitting in a segregated vault in Singapore, if it is sitting in a bonded warehouse in the Cayman Islands, if it is sitting in the Swiss free ports, then the President of the United States can sign all the executive orders he wants. He has no jurisdiction to seize metal that is legally domiciled in a sovereign nation that does not recognize his authority. Singapore has no capital gains tax on precious metals. Singapore has no reporting requirement to the IRS for bullion storage, though you still have to declare it on your FBAR. They cannot seize it. By moving a portion of your strategic stack outside of the U.S. banking and legal system, you create a dead man's switch. If the U.S. market goes dark, if the blackout hits, you still have access to the global market through your offshore holdings. And finally, how do you use the wealth without triggering the tax? You do what the ultra-wealthy have done for centuries. Buy, borrow, die. You never sell. Selling is a taxable event. Instead, you borrow. As silver becomes a high-value strategic asset, a new financial ecosystem will emerge. Private lenders will offer collateralized loans against physical metal. You deposit your silver into the vault. They lend you fiat currency or crypto stablecoins against that value. Loan proceeds are tax-free. It is debt, not income. You get the liquidity. But you keep the title. And because you never sold, you never realized a windfall profit. The era of prepping. Let's summarize the battlefield. We are moving into a world where silver is no longer just money. It is a weapon of war and a tool of energy security. The government has the motive, green transition, the means, Defense Production Act, and the opportunity, climate crisis, to seize control of this market. They will try to freeze the supply. They will try to cap the price. They will try to tax the profit. But they cannot stop the signal. They cannot stop the physical reality that 1,000 ounces of silver in a private vault is freedom. The strategies I just gave you, numismatics, offshore storage, asset-backed lending, these are not things you can set up after the executive order is signed. You cannot ship your silver to Singapore when the ports are closed. You cannot buy historical coins when the inventory is gone. You have to do it now. You have to build the ark before the rain starts. I want you to look at your stack today. Don't look at it as a trade. Don't look at the dollar value. Look at it and ask yourself, if the internet goes dark, if the dealer websites say out of stock, and if the president declares a national emergency tomorrow, is this stack safe? If the answer is no, you have work to do. The era of casual stacking is over. The eras of strategic prepping has begun. They told you 1933 could never happen again. They lied. It is happening. It is just wearing a different mask. In 1933, they came for the gold to save the banks. In 2026, they are coming for the silver to save the grid. The executive order is already written. The pen is hovering over the paper. The only variable left is you. Are you going to be a victim of history, or are you going to be the archivist of your own future? This is The Archivist for Veiled Wealth. Class dismissed.